Okay, well, we are coming to you today with a guest that's joining us from Camano Island in Washington, just across from Seattle, I'm guessing. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. And this is Carol. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Carol. Nice to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So tell us, how have you listened to the podcast? Like, how are you coming to us? Give us a little bit of how you
Yes, I
came.
found you just on good old YouTube, and then
Oh,
found
YouTube.
Googled you, found your email address, and contacted you in May
Yep.
to
I know
be
it's been a
on. Yeah,
while.
yeah. You're busy.
Thank you for being patient. It's good we're busy, right? Getting these
Yeah,
stories.
exactly.
So you're one of the
Archiving these stories
Yeah.
is how we look at it.
Yeah.
Right,
Having it for
right.
posterity, right? To have these
Yes,
stories for
and that's why I wanted to do this. I had two reasons I wanted to do this.
Mm-hmm.
One was so that my kids and grandkids have the chronology of my story because they've heard bits and pieces, and they're not really terribly interested at this point in their lives, but someday they might be.
That's right.
And also because my story is longer ago and I have kind of the long picture. And a lot of the people, it's more of a recent thing they've been doing and a more recent injury and wound, etc. So I thought I'll give people, hey, you can make it through this. And here's some ways that I did.
I like
That's
that.
great. I love that. That's really thoughtful.
Yeah.
It's important to tell stories. I also a side gig with the Moth, and our host every month says, "Please come tell your stories. It's important to tell stories, and stories are
Yes.
what it's history,
Yeah.
it's posterity, it's all those things." So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here to tell us.
Good. Good. Shall I just jump in?
Just
Yes.
jump in.
Okay. So I decided to do this chronologically,
Okay.
and you'll find out later how I found out all these bits and pieces. Okay. So, how my parents met. My father had just gotten out of the Marines. He
Are
was
these your first
24.
parents? Your
These
first
are my
parents?
biologic parents.
Okay.
This is the
Yeah.
beginning of me.
Okay. The
Okay.
The
making of
making of
you.
Carol.
There you go. I don't really know exactly how that happened, but there are some stories. So he had just come home from the Marines, was living in a cabin in his brother and sister-in-law's backyard. And my mother was 19 at the time and working as a dental assistant.
Was
She
this in
and
Washington?
This was in Muskegon, Michigan,
Oh.
And what year was this?
1957. I'm 67 years old.
Okay.
So they met because my mother and my father's sister-in-law were on the same bowling team. And my dad needed something to do, so he would go and watch his sister-in-law bowl. And my mother kind of got a crush on my father, and she would show up at my Aunt Margaret's house because he lived in the backyard in the cabin just to see if he was there. Left her gloves, had to come back, all that cute kind of stuff you do when you have a thing for somebody, right?
Mm.
She ends up pregnant, was not happy about it. He met with her father twice at a restaurant, offered to marry her. She did not want to get married. The rest of the pregnancy, they never really saw each other again or talked again. He gave money every paycheck to a lawyer in town, which I find a little bit bizarre because my adoptive parents also paid for the whole thing. So the agency made a little money on that, I think.
Double into
Um,
there.
yeah, he was never told when I was born or if I was a girl or a boy. Okay. So my mother stayed with her sister and brother-in-law when she started to show. And about 2 months before I was born, she went to a Salvation Army hospital for unwed mothers in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And that's where I was born. Very quick labor, 5 hours total, first baby, which I wish I'd known when I had my first child because I was kind of stalling at home and only got to the hospital with 4 minutes to spare.
Oh.
But
Gosh.
we don't have these stories, so we don't know
No.
about our biology, right? How it's going to work. Um, let's see.
Even you saying like she went to a Salvation Army home for unwed mothers,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
conjuring up what that is like now that we've read so
yes,
much. It's just
yes, what that was like for her,
in
right?
the beginning of your life.
Right. Well, she never saw me. She
Oh.
got out of there as fast as she could. At 13 days old, I was left in the hospital. She
Mm.
went to the courts with a representative from the Salvation Army and from the adoption agency and relinquished her rights. At 3 o'clock that day, I was placed with a foster family. The adoption agency didn't keep good records. We don't know who they were. A lady tried to help me last year, a very nice lady. It might have been a family named Inglesman. And if it was them, I was with a nurse as a mom and 4 little girls, ages 4, 5, 6, and 8,
Okay.
which I would have gotten plenty of attention and love there, I would think, if that was where it was and all these little girls around, right?
Are they not, they're not alive to ask or?
She wrote as an intermediary to some of those girls and never heard anything back. And I
Okay.
haven't been given any more information about who they are. You know how that goes.
Yep. Sadly.
Yeah. Yes. So I got picked up by my adoptive parents. They had married at 18 and 20, and my father was infertile due to multiple bouts of pneumonia and high fevers and stuff as a little boy. So he had a 0 sperm count, I found out later. So they were from a town called Pella, Iowa, which is a Dutch Calvinist community. Immigrants, like my parents' grandparents, were born in the Netherlands, and it's still a very Dutch-centered community in Iowa and very religious community. And the adoption agency was associated with that church.
Were you their first child they adopted?
I was their oldest. They were 26 and 28 when they got
Okay.
me.
So it was a Calvinist adoption agency?
Yes.
How
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Not
It's
many of
still
those
around all over
Huh.
the place. You've maybe heard of it, Bethany?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Bethany.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's how it kind of started. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Bethany was kind of worshipped in my home for how they got their kids. Um, I find this a little bit bizarre how it was done. So the parents show up and they are shown the baby, then they're told to go home, think about it overnight. They leave clothing, and the next day you come back and your child has been transformed into the clothing you brought, and you get all these pictures taken, and then you take the baby home. I have a picture of that day. I was sitting on my
Weird.
parents' lap as 3 months old, and I look at myself and I was just kind of wary.
Mhm.
Like,
I had,
what's going on? Who are these people? Why is there such a fuss? I can just see that in my own face.
why am I here?
Yeah. Yeah. So, especially if I kind of bonded with that other family, right? So, my parents had a 10-hour drive back to Iowa at the time, and both sets of grandparents were there to greet me. The next day, 36 people came to look at me.
Wow. Because it's a big, intricate Calvinist. This is their baby now. Well,
It's a big community thing. But I just think of my little self.
no, it's bizarre.
And I have no idea who these people are and what's going on. And if you got a dog from a rescue thing, would you have that many people
No.
come and look at it? No, because it might freak the dog out, right?
Yeah.
So
The
anyway,
lack of awareness of that era is astounding, isn't it?
it
Just
is. It is. Well, they
celebration
were
for the
told it's a
parents.
blank slate, and now this baby is given to you by God, and blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Right. Right. You were always meant to be ours. We just got you a little differently, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
And you
Let's
knew
see
you
where
were
I'm. Oh, I'm
adopted.
home.
You always knew
I
you were
always knew I was
adopted.
adopted,
Okay.
had that book, The Chosen Baby, that
Okay.
kind of a
Oh,
thing.
right. I see.
Right. Yeah. So I'd like to talk about my parents, my birth parents, what happened to them.
Okay.
11 months after I was born, my father married a nice lady who was a nurse, and they could not have kids because she'd had a ruptured appendix as a little girl and her tubes were clogged. She had one of the first surgeries at University of Michigan to try to open one's fallopian tubes in like 1960, 61, something like that, and it didn't work. So they actually adopted a girl. My father died at 31 of a genetic high cholesterol condition that runs in the family. So she was only 9 months old when he died.
Mm.
I found out I also have that genetic condition, which I didn't find out till my 30s. That's another reason why we should get our histories from the
course.
beginning. And I've been on treatment for it.
Yeah. You died
My
so young. You could have.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
I
hate
could have
that.
followed him if I
That's
had
right.
been treated. Yeah. My mother married a year and a half after I was born. 12 months later, had a girl and then a boy and then a girl. So by the time I was 6 years and 4 months old, she'd had 4 children, including me. She has been a very difficult person for those kids, mean and nasty, and is estranged from almost all of the family. She's still living and is still not a happy person.
Do you know why?
I don't. I'll get into this story about her. Okay. Um,
You
so
know,
I
when you
always
were
know I was
talking about your
adopted,
dad,
Wait,
blah, blah, blah. What?
sorry to understand, but when you're interrupt, but when you were talking about your dad, it's interesting. Like he tried to marry her, keep you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
can't have you, doesn't know about you at all, what happened, and then he
right.
adopts. I just
I
think
know,
that's
it's
like,
really ironic, isn't it?
yeah, very short
And then
time,
dies.
and then
Yeah. I'm sure he thought about me when he's adopting someone else,
that's
you
right,
know?
of course. That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah, right. Um, so I always knew I was adopted. We never talked about it. We never talked about feelings. I remember once asking my dad something like, "Why didn't my mommy keep me?" or something, or "Why did she give me away?" And he said, "She couldn't take care of you." And in my child's mind, I thought, well, why didn't somebody just give her some money? Then she could take care of me, you know? I had an episode once with my adoptive mother. She really never dealt with her own infertility issues. And
Mhm.
over time, she also developed severe bipolar disorder and
Mm.
was hospitalized probably 6 times. And I know had 4 series of ECT treatments, a couple of suicide attempts. She was really messed up. The older she got, it got worse. But
Herein is also an issue with adoption, right? You're being placed with people where nobody's really being looked into
Mm-mm.
their own mental health or any of that stuff.
right
It's a
in her
gamble.
20s, she was different when she got
Mhm.
me, right? But it ran really, really strong in her family. I've done some research on that. I became a doctor, so I kind of
Oh,
investigated all that
yeah.
and the genetic link for them and that kind of thing. Yeah. So one episode was, I remember her best friend Jackie, who's lovely and still alive, had a couple of kids our age. I have a little brother and a little sister. So I was there with my little brother playing with her kids and found out they were going to have another baby. I must have been 5 or 6. And I remember being really, really jealous and saying, we're going to have a baby too. Apparently, she got all excited and called my mom about this. And it wasn't true. There was no third baby coming at that time. But I get home and my mother lit into me, screaming, losing her shit, shoved me in this cupboard in the kitchen that had the
Oh,
broom and the ironing board, you know? So I just learned from an early age, don't say anything. Keep it calm, get along, right?
yeah,
Because she was dangerous at times.
yeah.
Yeah. And did I fit in with my family? They were lovely people. And I was always included and never treated differently. Went there 3, 4 times a week to my dad's side, often to my mom's dad and mother. She passed away. He married another lovely lady. So all good people. So, but did I fit in? You always knew you weren't really part of them, you know?
Mhm.
And I'm about 6 feet tall. My parents weren't that tall. My siblings who got adopted weren't that tall. So you felt like you stuck out.
Mhm.
I was obviously on the intelligent side of the scale, which was something my mother didn't like. She wanted me to play with dolls and be more like her, and
Oh,
never really accepted what I looked like. And I knew it. I knew it from a young age that I wasn't right. I didn't look right. I didn't act right, according to my mother,
mhm.
which is important for a kid that you get approved of by your mom, you know?
100%. I sort of had a little bit of that myself, not fitting what was the
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like I would do things like refuse to wear white gloves to 8th grade graduation, and she would come unglued and scream at me, "Why do you always have to be so different?" Because she
Uh-huh.
really wanted everybody me to fit in with society and not rock the boat, you know.
How many
So
adoptive siblings did you have?
I have a brother 3.5 years younger and a sister 7 years younger.
Mm.
And I went to the agency and watched that little ritual every time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Being the oldest, that's an interesting perspective.
yeah.
Mm.
So, and my sister has found her whole family. And she also gave a son for adoption when she was 17. And she's reconnected with him and his whole family. So that's been a good story on their side.
Yeah, so you two talk about that and have your
We
own.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, and
And
not to tell your brother's story, but is he
he wants
interested?
nothing to
No.
do with it, doesn't want to learn
Yeah,
anything about it. And yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well,
you grow up in this family.
I go off to college, which is another Christian Reformed Church college in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I was born.
Mm.
So then you think, oh, I wonder if any of these people around here are related to me because I was born here,
Mm-hmm.
right? At 19, I went to the adoption agency and I remember making the appointment. I didn't tell anybody. You dress as nice as you can so that you look real legitimate and not crazy, right? To talk to you. And they read all that non-identifying information stuff, which is when I found out about my father's age and how many siblings and my mother and all that stuff and what they'd done for a living. He was French, she was Dutch. You don't get where they were from or names, except the man slipped and said Connie. He goes, oh, you didn't hear me say that.
Oh,
Huh.
I wonder if he did it on purpose.
yeah.
Because it's really wrong that you're sitting across the desk from somebody and they have all your information and won't show you or tell you
It
about it. It's
must
really
be.
bizarre,
It
you
is
know?
bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, and just that when you first came on, you said you were going to tell this. You were young going into this. You were really looking. I mean,
Yes, I was.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. And keeping it a secret
mm-hmm. Well,
and not trusting anybody to be there for me.
no.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So at 28, out of the blue, my adoptive dad hands me my adoption papers and it had a name on there, Paula Ann Fongers.
You
So I
didn't
just,
ask, he just came to
they
you
just
with it?
handed it to me
And where was your mom?
upstairs. We were in his office in the basement. I don't know
Oh,
why he did it. No clue.
interesting.
Yep.
He
I
must have
was
sensed,
moving.
he must have
I
sensed that you felt this need and
I
didn't.
don't know.
Or
My
he was
dad
cleaning
is
out his desk.
I
well,
don't know. It's true.
I really don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe he felt he needed to be honest and he had this. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we were moving cross country. I was married by then, had a baby, finished residency, moving to Washington, where my husband is from, and I got the papers. So I just sat on it for a while. And after I weaned my last baby, I was just turned 34, and I realized I had the energy to go into this further.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought if my name was Paula Ann Fongers on this, and she was Connie, maybe her name was Connie Fongers, right? You put these pieces together.
Yeah.
So I started attending something called WARM. I think it means Washington Adoptive Rights Movement or Reunion Movement or something like that. And they really helped me. And they said that Michigan records aren't very well sealed. So if you have that information, write for your birth certificate. So I did as Paula Ann Fongers, feeling a little weird, but that is who I am
Right.
also, right?
Right.
And her name and where I was born. And bingo, I got my original birth certificate,
They
which
just
was
sent it.
supposed to be sealed, but they don't have their records very well
Huh.
filed or something. So I got it. Said she was from Muskegon, Michigan. So back then, this was in 1992, so well before internet kind of stuff, right? Called directory assistance, wanted the phone number for Connie Fongers in Muskegon, Michigan, and I got it. And I thought, oh my goodness, called, and the lady goes, oh, this is my married name. You want blah, 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 and this is her phone number. So my husband gets on the other line. You know, when you had just phones and two phones on the same line in your house, so he's listening. And I called her and they'd give me this little thing to say, like, I don't know if we have a good connection. Could you write down my number in case we get disconnected and we need to call back and that whole thing.
A script. Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I have reason to believe you might be my birth mother. No, no, and hangs up on me.
Oh.
So then you think, now what do I do? So I wrote her a letter, you know, that adoptee letter where
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything from you,
Right.
and I'm just wonderful, and I just want some health information, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right. And we exchanged a few letters. She was pretty mean and nasty. Um, the adoption agency, she had said that my father talked her into doing a lot of things she wouldn't otherwise have done. By the time she writes me now, 34 years later, it was date rape.
Oh.
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
interestingly, with this warm group I was going to, the lady there goes, "Oh, yeah, right. How many of you born in the 50s and 60s were conceived by date rape?" And like almost everybody raised their hand. It's the story the lady said to save their own
Reputation.
whatever reputation. Right, right. Even
Yeah.
though it was a secret. So um one clue she did though is says your father died when you were 6. So I thought, you know, he was a cop, it said. If she's from Muskegon and went back to Muskegon, he was likely from Muskegon. And when a cop dies young, what do? Huge funeral, right?
Big
All the
deal.
cars show up, it makes it to the newspaper, all that. So I started calling around to the different police departments and sheriff's departments that I could get a hold of through calling directory assistants and asking operators, right? And I just told all the information I had to these places. Said, I'm looking for this guy. He's dead, but I know he's French and he was tall and he died in approximately this year. And within 2 days, his beat partner called me back and I had a name
Really?
for him.
Mm.
So he's Marvin Arthur Francoeur, but the family changed the name to Hart because it was just easier. So that was my dad. And he goes, I think you have an aunt who's still around. Your uncle died, but I'm going to find her.
This is the beat cop partner.
The beat cop partner, Bill
Oh,
Hicks, bless his heart.
yeah,
So
good
he
guy.
found my Aunt Margaret and her 5 kids, my first cousins, and they have welcomed me with open arms. She's the one who told me all the stories about my parents and their beginning and so forth.
So
So,
they
yeah,
had a relationship. It wasn't what she was saying.
right.
Well,
Exactly.
she had the crush, remember, and would show
Right.
up. And,
Exactly. There was a relationship there.
Mhm.
It wasn't a date rape
Yeah.
situation. Um, so anyway, these people are great. One of the things I've done to heal from the birth mother rejection, okay, is do genealogy.
Yeah.
So I've researched also my dad's side of the family, and it's really cool. And I've tried to go all these places where they were. So they were French Canadians initially. My grandpa was born in Ishpeming, the Upper Peninsula. They came over there in 1880 to work in the mines. So I've traced the family way back all the way to the founders of Quebec. There's a statue to my grandfather and grandmother in Quebec City. They were
Oh,
kind of the original settlers.
I have, well, I'm
Also,
from original settlers as well.
are we related?
We
We
could
might
be.
We'll
have to look through this
There's a
stuff
okay.
later.
heck of a lot of inbreeding back then, so we
Mhm.
could be.
We
There
really
Yeah.
was.
could be.
Yeah. Also from the original French settlers of what's now Nova Scotia.
Mm.
And my 8 times great grandmother was an Abenaki Indian woman of the Penobscot tribe. It's cool what the Catholic Church kept for records. You can find a
Yeah, they
lot.
did.
Yeah. And the man who came over was an apothecary to Quebec. His father was apothecary to Queen Catherine de' Medici, wife of Henry II of France.
Come on, and you're a doctor.
Yeah,
Goes right down.
there you go.
I want,
Didn't need to,
did your biological father have other children, or would you have been it?
not that we know of.
So you would have
The
been it?
no, well, he adopted.
With his wife, but
Yeah.
I don't think he had other children with other women
Oh.
illegitimately, but not that we know of. I don't know.
Hmm.
By the time I was conceived, both of his parents had already dropped dead at
Okay.
60 of heart-related stuff too. So it's really strong in the family. And
So
his
after
brother,
you found all this out, that's when you went and got yourself checked out?
well, actually it was between my second and third child, they were drawing my blood and go, "Oh, your blood is kind of milky."
Oh.
I
Hmm.
thought that's weird and found out it was from really, really high cholesterol.
And then he had it. I mean, it would have been
Yeah,
nice to
which
know.
is it's a French Canadian thing due to
Mm,
founder's effect. So a lot of them have it. So
gosh.
yeah.
It's
What,
it's due to what, did you say?
It's founders effect. They came in the early 1600s, and the Battle of the Plains of Abraham was 1759 when the Brits took over Canada, and very few French immigrated after that. So they all end up marrying each other. So
Yeah.
genetic diseases start popping up.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so go on.
Yeah. So yeah, that side of family is great. We see each other, even though it's 2,000 miles away, we stay in touch. We support each other. They've told me everything they can. When my dear aunt passed away, picture of me was on that cork board where they have pictures of family at the funeral. And I thought, wow, and this makes me cry. I said, no, you are our cousin because you don't feel like it.
Yeah. It's so grounding. It's so grounding.
Yep. I wasn't going to do that, but
No,
you
it's
know what
okay.
it's like. Yeah. So that's all good. So to get back to my mother and my birth family, my mother is very unkind and nasty. She just is. And you realize it's not about you when people don't treat you right.
Yeah.
So my mother, ironically, started going to my aunt's church after her husband died. So they're reconnecting, and they never ever talked about me, even though they both know the story. But I got to spy on my mother a bit through her. So once we went to church, I got to sit behind my mother, a few pews, and my aunt came, and my aunt's aunt, and my cousins, and my husband, and all these people. So we were all there. And I went to the iced tea table, and we said, "Pardon me," around each other at the iced tea table at church. She still lives in Muskegon. I heard through that church that she was estranged from her children. So I thought, well, I'm going to contact the oldest sister. I tried to contact my siblings years and years ago at the beginning, also my uncle and my aunt, and got nothing back except a threat from my mother that she was going to sue me. Unless I promised that no one I knew or was related to would ever contact anyone she knew or was related to. My friend says, why don't you say, sure, send me a list of everyone you know or who are you're related to, and I'll send it off to everyone I knew or are related to, so they'll make sure they never contact each other. But I just let it drop. So I contacted my oldest sister. So this is maybe 7 years ago or something like that. And she was now willing to speak with me on the phone. So she is 2.5 years younger than I am. So I got some more information. We've met 3 times. She and the youngest sister met me and my husband for supper one night in Muskegon. The youngest sister was battling cancer, and she's passed away since then. But my sister is okay. She's been decent, but she's not interested in a relationship at all. For a few years, I tried to let's be normal. I'll send a Christmas card.
Right.
I'll text and say Merry Christmas. I never get anything back. But, she hasn't been unkind, just very distant.
And it sounds like she might have her own trauma from your biological mom.
I think so too. She was told some horrible things, which I don't need to repeat here, from her mother. My brother, I never did meet. He hunts a lot, so forth. 3.5 years ago, out of the blue, he called me. And we've had a really nice relationship. We've met 3 or 4 times. We visited on the phone a couple times a month, like for an hour, 2 hours. So I've got to understand that family a lot more. I think there's a lot of coldness. Like his mother's mother was babysitting him. He fell and cut his face, about 6 or 7 years old. She made him stay on the porch so he wouldn't bleed in her house until our mother came to pick him up. So there's just coldness on that side of the family. And my mother was probably not treated well either by her mother to know how to be emotionally warm and so forth, But there's still no excuse.
No.
Right.
You still get into adulthood and you still need to grow up and work through your own crap, I think.
Exactly. Here.
When you were sitting at that church, she didn't know, did you look like her? Like there was no oh.
I know. I was wondering at the iced tea table. I was wondering.
Yeah. She didn't recognize me. I look more like my dad.
You do.
Yeah. I have some traits of hers, and I have my brother and I have the same shaped hands. I did find that out. And my sister who passed away, my adoptive sister teases me that I have no butt. And my adoptive sister also has no butt. So I think my shape came from her side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody looking at us would say that we're related. In fact, when Aunt Margaret died, I went to the funeral and I was sitting in there, and a bunch of old ladies from that church are sitting in front of me and they're nosy and they go, "Now, how did you know Margaret?"
Oh, God.
Well, she's my aunt. My dad and her husband were brothers. Okay. And then it just blurted out, "And you might know my mother, Connie. She goes to this church too, although not much lately. And I'm actually the bastard oldest daughter no one's supposed to know about."
Good for you.
I thought, oh no. So I told my brother, he goes, "Oh, that's good." And I told my cousins and they go, "Oh, that's good." So anyway, I didn't offend any of them.
So the aunt that was in church when you went,
Yeah.
was this the aunt where your dad lived in the guest
Yeah.
house?
Yes.
So
Cool.
she could give you, but she was nice and warm, correct?
Yeah. She's just lovely. Aunt Mar and that whole side of the family is warm and lovely and inclusive.
Love
I'm
that.
so curious as to what happened to your mother. I will never know, I guess, but
We'll never know.
my curiosity is so
I
piqued
know.
that
I know. I saw her senior picture from her yearbook. Another weird thing is that side of the family won't give me any pictures. Like my brother, could I have a picture of her as a child? Could I? Won't give me anything.
Huh.
So anyway, um, yeah, there she is, prim and proper with glasses on. Haha. And it said her pet peeve, peroxided blondes.
Oh,
This is 1955. I thought, why would that be her pet peeve? And then I thought, oh, she's a real blonde.
oh.
So I
She
think she
liked
kind
it.
of thinks she's better than other people, right? So the fact that she gets pregnant without being married, she couldn't get married pregnant because she's better than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know for sure, but I just tried to figure it out too. I don't get it.
And you,
oh,
you always put
interesting.
stories over it, right? It's like,
Right, right. Try to make sense of what doesn't make sense.
Right. When we're not told,
no.
it's part
Mhm.
of that ghost kingdom,
Right, right.
making up the stories.
And she makes up stories big time. By the time my siblings found out about me and she had to talk with them about it, by that time I had been conceived by violent rape from a police officer she didn't even
Oh my
know.
Oh
gosh.
my.
And that the other police officers would stop her father on fake traffic violations to threaten him that if they ever brought charges, they would do bad things to him, which is all lies because I've met his beat partners. They didn't know anything about. So he didn't talk about it at all to them. So,
No, this is all shame from her. Like, let me put why I had to do this because this was so
right,
awful. And don't get
right.
into it, you know. And maybe also to say, don't get to know her because she's this, right? The whole thing.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. She's kind of a piece of work, huh?
Oh,
Yeah.
and she's still living?
She is still alive. I
And
went
but your
back.
siblings don't talk, they're still estranged?
My oldest sister will not do anything with her, totally estranged. And my brother promised their father that he would take care of her. So he runs her to the doctor and on errands, but really bites his tongue and hates it, kind of a
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
situation. She's very abnormal. The minister of that church I know from my aunt, visited him several times. He's a wonderful man. And he said she calls regularly just wanting things. And
Hmm.
he goes, "Oh," when he heard about me, he goes, "That explains a lot." So she's just a difficult personality.
Yeah.
Mm. Sounds like maybe some mental
Yeah.
illness. Who knows?
Don't know. Or is it just choices?
Yep.
I don't know. You know, you can go through something that was sad and difficult, and then still you need to choose to have a heart of love
Mm-hmm.
toward everybody, including yourself, and
Yeah.
step up to the plate for people, I think. Yeah. So, oh, an interesting thing I wanted to say. When Bill Hicks was trying to find my aunt for me way back in the day, I had a dream that I met my dad at a restaurant. I've never seen a picture of him. I just had this little description from the non-identifying ID. And he was about the age he was when he died. And we visited, and I had his eyebrows and blah, blah, blah. And I said to him, I heard that I was conceived by date rape. And in the dream, he goes, well, I never heard her complaining. It was kind of funny, right? So when I met the family, and I felt when I woke up in the morning, I'd really met him. It was the weirdest feeling. Like, it was calm and accepting, and he was good. And I got to meet my dad. 2 days later, Bill called me that he found my aunt. Isn't that weird?
Wow.
I mean, that gives me chills because I believe in that kind of thing. So that's
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, when I was meeting the family, then I told them about this dream, and I told them about what he'd said, including his widow, and they all burst out laughing. They said that's exactly what he would have said. That was his personality. So
and how he talked.
yeah. So that was kind of interesting.
Wow, I love that. So are
Yeah.
you you're just no contact with your mom?
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
I did this fall, I went to Michigan to see a bunch of, I've got relatives adoptive and birth there and some friends. And I went to see the minister again, and I wanted to see where her ashes are going to go. There are these, I don't know what you call it, where those little brass doors where you stick ashes in.
Yeah, like the
Mhm.
wall. We had that at our
It's
church.
not a cryptorium, but
No.
it's some name like that.
Mhm.
Got to see where she's going to go. And I said, let's call her. So we called her, and she didn't answer her phone. It turns out she was out at the doctor or something like that. So he and I got flowers, and I left flowers by her door, which you'd think would be a nice thing. And she probably sees it as an attack. But, I tried to be nice. And so
You're just doing your part that you can
I
do
wanted one
because
chance to see her because she's 87, be the last time in Michigan while she's alive. But it probably won't happen.
I like that all these people are helping you. When you got emotional about your family, my biological family put that in their obituary of my grandmother, my name. And at the time I was kind of very fogged, I'll say. So I was like, what?
Hmm.
But now it's like I appreciate it so much that I was thought
Yeah.
of to be in that.
Yeah. Like, and why do we have
I'm
to
real or
be
something.
grateful that somebody acknowledges us
I don't
and our
know.
relationship in the family? Because
It
it's a
brought up that
fact.
memory.
It's a
Yeah.
fact, but we're taught that somehow we don't deserve to be part of the family.
Yeah.
Well, and I think they're,
Yeah.
just deeply when you're born in the way in which we're born, it's just part of us to feel unworthy, unwanted,
Well,
without even
Yeah.
knowing it.
have you read
Exactly.
into epigenetics? We
Mhm.
get messages even during pregnancy. And think of this little baby who I never even saw my mother's face.
I didn't
And I have
either.
13 days of records at the hospital when they changed your diaper, when you pooped, how much you drank, what you weighed each day. But I had no consistent person Gucciing me and telling me how great I
No.
was, and that stuff you
Mhm.
never got.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're just even with animals, I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that there are laws about when you're allowed to separate puppies from their mothers
Yeah.
to
Mhm. We
sell them
talk about
on.
this often on the
At least
podcast.
it's at least 6 weeks. I know in California or 10
Okay,
weeks
yeah.
places.
Mhm.
And it's weird how we don't think about that with humans. We're just mammals. We have the
Right.
same
Of
biologic
course.
needs, to smell our mothers and hear our mothers and all that kind of stuff. So
And
anyway,
even
I
in the
don't think that's
womb,
right.
even in the womb, they're
Well,
doing
and
that
it, it
research.
Right.
it goes against the narrative that is important to keep up in order to keep this industry going. The cogs of the
Yeah.
machine need to
Yeah.
continue to keep
Yeah.
this
I had a
very,
friend
very
recently.
profitable industry going.
Yeah. I had a friend recently who goes, well, why didn't they just adopt
Oh
in
yeah,
that
that makes
Oh,
tone?
I
sense.
know.
You know? So actually, she was very receptive. I tried to be kind about it. And people just don't think. They haven't had that experience, and they just like, oh, that's a good solution, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, that's just
Yeah,
because it's the ingrained public narrative. Um,
it is. It is.
so, yeah.
And we all know this world is not black and white. And there are sometimes it's best that people shouldn't be in whatever family they're in because it's dangerous for them,
Yeah.
right? But usually the story isn't that black and white. So
No. Well, and reform is so needed. I mean, there's other ways, right? This is
yeah.
this is a good conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Carol. I'm really glad we have your
Good.
story and it's
Well, thank you. And I
it's
just
being
wanted to say,
preserved and
yeah, I think that birth parents have an obligation to the child to be loving and accepting no matter the circumstances.
Mhm.
Like that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
Thank you
and
so
do
much.
your own
innocent.
work. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Oh,
really
thank
enjoyed
you.
talking to you.
Good.
Too.
Good.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.